Are these all on? Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just get everybody another minute or two to kind of get here, then I'll get started. I had help. Everybody it's only me today. So I think the Medicare certification, the surveyors may have just showed up. So the director of nursing was supposed to be here to help me, and she's taking care of that right now. And I had Henrico County Emergency Management Group, they were supposed to come as well, and then they had another emergency. So that's fine. We can. I'll do the best I can with with what's going on. Just to let everybody know, my name is Lacey Salomone. I'm the Director of Maintenance and Engineering. I guess the process is here. We are slowly upgrading and modifying our emergency preparedness plan. So it's been updated. This is a ever-evolving process. This will never end. This will be something that's upgraded continuously from now until the end of time. That's kind of our plan. If you're really interested in seeing the plan, Eleanor has a copy at her desk. I have a copy at my desk, and then over in healthcare, Tamika and then the admin assistant, they have a copy there. So if you're interested in looking through it. One of the things I'd like to do is maybe on a monthly basis, get together, not necessarily emergency, but facilities and emergency. So this will be, we're going to try to do this, go over the policy, our evacuation policy today. But then in the future, I know we're going to have an active shooter training. Our speaker is trying to work with him on a schedule. He has some family health concerns. But I'm trying to work with him on schedule to get him out here to do an active shooter training. And then what I'd like to do is maybe once a month meet just to give everybody an update on where we are with facilities. But at the same time, we'll touch on an emergency topic every month. I think that'll help just kind of start going over the policy and what our policy is and what we'd like everybody to do. And this will be kind of the beginning of that for evacuation. I guess what I'd like to do today, just go over our evacuation policy, what we'd like everybody to do, what us as Cedarfield, what we're supposed to do, and then who we reach out to help us, and then really spend most of the time trying to take questions. My help isn't here today, so if there are any questions, Allison is in the back. She can kind of try to jot them down, and I'll jot them down if I can't answer, and we'll try to get the answers for everybody. I guess jumping right into our evacuation plan, we are a shelter-in-place facility. If something happens, it's really designed to shelter in place. If there's a fire, we'll evacuate the room, but everybody else shelters in place. We rely on the fire department to tell us when we're going to evacuate. So if there's a true fire that happened in an apartment or in a healthcare room, we respond, the nurses and then the maintenance, we respond and we go straight to the room and we try to take care of whatever's going on in the room, but we try to shelter in place. We don't ask anybody to leave. We actually ask you to go into your apartment and shut the door, and that's where you're going to be the safest. You're shutting the door for the smoke to make sure there's no smoke coming in. When we decide, if it gets bad enough where somebody has to evacuate, for this example, a fire, if there was a true fire, the fire department's going to lead that evacuation. They'll go door to door to help people get evacuated. Today we'll talk a little bit more about independent living and what we're supposed to do in independent living, but we'll also touch on assisted living and healthcare on what we're supposed to do. And I don't want to read the policy word for word, but I'll just kind of go over some of the things. in a true event of like for an evacuation, if we were going to evacuate, it has to be a really bad event that happens if we evacuate. And some of the things that come to my mind, and knock on wood, nothing happens. If we had a flood that was bad enough to evacuate, it would be isolated to certain apartments. And the idea between we want to, if we need to evacuate, stay within the campus. So if you're being relocated from your apartment, the idea is, can we find somewhere for you on campus? That where we have the fellowship hall here that we can try to create where somebody can evacuate. Up in healthcare, we have the great room, which will be renovated shortly, so by July we should be okay. The dining room, or even if we need to go to the clubhouse. That's kind of our first thing. That's where we want to go first if we need to evacuate. Like I said, if there was a flood and it's isolated certain apartments, or a fire like we talked about, until we can get everything cleaned up, that's what we want to do, keep everybody on campus. If it's a little bit bigger event where we have to, where we need to evacuate more people than what we can handle on campus, we have an agreement with Deep Run Baptist Church right up the road here on 3 Chop. And we actually have a key to their facility. We have an agreement with the church where we can evacuate to the church and stay there. That would be I guess that would be a little bit more temporary until if we were going to do long term. If we were going to go a little bit longer term as a bigger evacuation process, we are going to reach out to our other Pinnacle Living facilities. So we reach out to Richmond and or Windsor Mead and see, and we have our transportation here to get to those facilities if it was a little bit bigger, more regional event. That would be Windsor Mead, Roanoke. I guess if something regionally really happened in this area, Richmond area, we probably wouldn't go to Richmond, but if it's a possibility, we would. Our last resort is working with Henrico County Emergency Management, and they would try to help us find resources to evacuate, or who I've been working with a lot lately is the Central Virginia Healthcare Coalition, and actually was in training with them yesterday. So they do a lot of the emergency preparedness, and in a true evacuation, a major event, that's who we would reach out to get. And we actually have a MOU, memorandum of understanding, with them to help us out in the event of a catastrophic event comes in. Example would be if a tornado came and took down half the building and we need to relocate a lot of people, that they will help us out. The Central Virginia Healthcare Coalition, they actually are going to help us find facilities to relocate to. They will help with transportation, help us try to get transportation if we can't use our own buses. We'll use our own transportation, but they can help get extra transportation for us. So these are, like I said, huge events. Tornado would be one, something that we're actually really displaced, and we're going to be displaced for a while. We were talking about different levels. So independent living, if we are doing a true evacuation, most independent living residents hopefully can kind of help evacuate themselves. They can help drive. The idea would be, the great thing for us would be if you could drive yourself to a relative's house or a friend's house and get off campus. That would be the best scenario for us. The assisted living, the nurses, that's why I wish Director of Nursing was here to kind of help out, but they all have phone numbers of all the family of assisted living and healthcare. If they could come and kind of help get residents to their house and kind of keep them for a little while until our event is over. The last resort would be, like I said, if we try to bring residents to Windsor Mead or Roanoke or wherever we need to take them. If we need to take them off campus, there's a whole policy on details on how you keep track of the resident, make sure all the we have all the medications, make sure we have all the medical records, and make sure, we're set. So when we transport a resident, if they're in healthcare, they're going to have the medication, everything's going to be brought with them and kept track of them, while they're going, until they come back. That's kind of, and then that's where we kind of have a checklist of what we have for when we do these evacuations and how you track each resident. And really the big part of this is really geared a little bit more towards the healthcare residents, where who's going where they're going, medication, everything's there. But we also, at the end of the day, we have to plan on everybody returning. So we'll start thinking about a plan as we're evacuating. We're already thinking about how we're going to get everybody back. So that's kind of how it spells out with the policy. It was saying that we rely on the Cedar Field vehicles. If the Cedar Field vehicles, if we need more space than the Cedar Field vehicles have, we'll reach out to the corporate office to get their vehicles. And then we'll start reaching out to, like I said, Henrico County, emergency management, and even contract out if it's going to be available to James River Bus Line is on here as a company that we would use. That's really what the policy states. Like I said, the policies are ever changing. They're going to be upgraded. We're working on, we reviewed all the policies a couple months ago, and now we're starting to revise them. So I'm sure the policy is pretty brief right now. As I have questions today, the policy will definitely be revised after we can tweak everything, and that's going to be for all the emergency policies. Really, I just want to kind of now just open up for questions. What questions do you have, and then what? Good.
Hold on.
Oh.
Caught me by surprise, Lacey. You got it.
Oh.
I'm speaking for myself, but I think
The folks watching at home won't be able to hear you.
I may be speaking for myself, but I think a lot of people here were interested in how we're going, if we have to evacuate in an emergency. We could not shelter in our rooms. How are we going to get out of the building?
So
Especially those that are not mobile.
So if anybody is not mobile, that's where we kind of, I guess we really need the director of nursing to kind of help me out a little bit here. We have, and we're going to start evacuation drills. That's going to start hopefully within the next couple of months. But I know we've ordered chairs so to get down steps and get downstairs and get out of the building. We have that set up. I guess it really depends on the situation. So I'm trying to think, if we needed to evacuate during a fire, this would be one example. The fire department's going to be here to help the residents out that can't help themselves, so that are not mobile. And if they need extra help, they will call extra help for a fire. For a tornado, it's a little bit different situation. We have the tornado policy where everybody's going to be in the interior of the building. If it gets bad enough where a tornado truly hits here in the building, then we have other procedures. So the idea, hopefully everybody's going to be safe in the interior of the building, but if we need to get out of the building at that point, that's where the team members are going to help. But the same thing, we're going to reach out to fire department in Henrico County to actually help the residents get out of the building. I can't think of a situation where we would need to, but I can't think of a situation that would happen where we as team members need to start escorting and helping people out of the building to evacuate without having response from the fire department. So we're really going to push a little bit on the fire department and emergency management to help us out on those evacuations.
Do you have individuals that are in independent living identified who would be those people who would need assistance?
Yes, I think the clinic has all those individuals who would need, and that's another thing. You know, when we're evacuating, we need to evaluate how long it's going to be and what the plan is to get everybody back. So the clinic does have a list of all the individuals that do need extra help in independent living. And then I think they also have the list of medications and everything that is going to have to go with them when they get evacuated.
Okay, to follow up on that question, I need a rollator, so do I need to let the clinic know that I rely on a rollator and that I don't do steps? And if the elevators aren't working, I'm gonna need assistance. Is that up? Should I tell the clinic that? Because I'm not sure they have that information.
I can find out about that. I'll try to do so. Let me write that down and I'll find out.
Lacey, I'll answer that. Just reach out to your social worker if you're concerned about your mobility, and they'll work with you to get in place what you need. Okay?
Thank you.
This is an area question in case there was a mass problem, tornadoes, such a. Do you have radio communication with the emergency departments, or is it all cell phone and telephone?
So in a true emergency, our cell phones will probably not work, so we're going to rely a lot on texting. With the Central Virginia Healthcare Coalition, they do drills every month, and they do drills via email, text, and phone. So to answer your question, if it was somebody with Central Virginia Healthcare Coalition, we could communicate with them via text. The fire department, we do have radio, two-way communication with the radio, and the fire department does have our radio and is on our frequency. So we are every fire drill they come on, we are communicating with them as they come on property. So every fire drill that we have, if it's not planned, the fire department comes. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, maintenance or the nursing staff is there before the fire department comes, and we are communicating to the fire department, let them know they can slow down. It was burnt toast. It's just a little bit of smoke. You don't have to worry. So we do have radio communication with the fire department as well.
Just what would happen at night when most of the people, the staff members are not here? I've thought the other night when we had a room full of people here for the concert, suppose somebody's child that was upset came in with a gun. What would happen? Would the person, the concierge, have to call people? Because very few people are here at Cedarville.
So if to get into an active shooter, we have a consultant that's going to help us out to talk over what we would do in an active shooter event. So I would like to leave that up to the expert to answer specific questions, and I'll try to get him lined up as soon as possible. But to try to help answer the question a little bit, we have a nursing supervisor here at all times, and it kind of goes towards our incident command. Somebody needs to be in charge. So the nursing supervisor, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think after hours, the nursing supervisor is going to be our incident commander until somebody else shows up to relieve him or her. So they would be here to kind of help direct and coordinate everything until the executive director gets here, or the director of nursing, or whoever the person in charge would be. And then I guess to try to answer your question specifically, if something did happen like that, we do have the push button, so the concierge should have a button, emergency push button to call, and if she hits it, everybody's coming, the police department, everybody. So we did, and the gatehouse has it as well. So we do try to put emergency procedures in place to get help quicker, and that's one of the things we have, emergency push button.
I'd like to ask about a fire. If you see the smoke coming down the hallway, what do you do to your own doorway? Do you put anything under it or not?
With towels.
If there is a fire in the building, I mean, I guess I'll have to answer, and I hate to answer saying, yeah, that'd be a great idea without getting some help from the fire department. That's why I wish emergency management would have been here. They could have answered this question a little better. I think it would be a great idea if you put towels at the base of the door if there's smoke coming down. I'm hoping it never gets that bad where the fire department would be here to help. I get a little reluctant to say you really need a towel because the fire department is usually here within minutes. And if they need to start evacuating because the smoke is that bad, they will start evacuating people from your rooms, from the apartment. So my initial response would be, and I'll try to get a better answer straight from the fire department, but my initial response would be the fire department should be here to help everybody in that case.
Some people in independent living do not have access to a car and do not drive anymore. What happens then?
Well, that's where that's where when we start evacuating, that's what we said. What we would like to have happen if the independent living residents can, or even assisted living, if family is local and come and get you and can take you to their house or a friend's house, that kind of helps us. But we have the Cedarfield vans and we have corporate vehicles that can kind of help out to help evacuate. So that would be a situation where you would be evacuated within the Cedarfield, kind of the vehicles.
What accountability or who is in charge that this is a big area and say you have a catastrophic tornado, fire, incident of any type, and I don't know about you, but if there's a fire, a full-blown fire, and I know it and it's close to me, I'm not staying in my apartment. So, or if I'm out on the campus somewhere else and say I go out in front of town center and you think that I'm in my apartment, how is the accountability of the residents going to be taken?
That's one that we really need to work on. We're trying to figure out how to better account for everybody. Is Florence, are we meeting tomorrow on, so there's a system that we're looking at to actually keep track of people in the building, because it's not just residents, it's also visitors. To keep track of everybody that's on the property. If a true catastrophic event happens, how can we make sure everybody's out safe? So if something happens now, before we put that in place, we would almost have to go door by door, the fire department. Until we get that system in place, it'd be a little bit easier to track everybody and make sure everybody leaves.
So I had thought in terms of my insurance policy, my personal property policy, and I hadn't given it the thought I would have living in South Carolina and Georgia with threats of hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. And you mentioned floods, and I know my own insurance policy does not cover floods. And I was wondering, in Savannah where I was living, you had to be in a flood zone to be able to get flood insurance. So do you know if we're in a flood zone, or do you practically know if we've had a problem with floods in the past?
Well, I think what I was referring to was an internal building flood. If a pipe busts, if a sprinkler head, if something happens, and it's a flood inside the building. I do not know how the insurance companies would handle that. And the reason I bring that up, they had a pretty major flood at Christmas time at Windsor Mead, at one of the sister communities, from a sprinkler head freezing. So I don't know, and I think it displaced 3 families there. So that's where we're sensitive to that, and we're trying to stay a little proactive to make sure that doesn't happen as a maintenance department. But you never know when something like that could happen.
And I think part of this was to say to the residents, you better check your insurance, your homeowner's insurance
Yeah.
policy. They
So-
may not.
So just to repeat that, I think that, it was, for me, I don't know what the insurance policy, so maybe, for a resident to kind of check the insurance policy to make sure if a building flood, a pipe burst, you are still covered.
But is Cedar Field in a flood zone?
I don't think so. I can find out, but yeah, I don't think so.
Didn't hear the question.
Question was, is Cedar Field in a flood zone? So I don't think so.
I have a question. I suppose most people know that there is a back entrance to Cedarfield, but would those gates be open in order for people to leave if they have a car here?
Florence, do you know who has the key to that gate?
Legalize.
Do I? I've never tried to open the gate, so I guess I can find out. But that, in a true event, yes, I think we can get that, would open that gate, and I think it leads to the back, the neighborhood right beside us. So right now, that gate, from my understanding, that gate is set up for exactly what we're talking about, emergency. So we would open it up if added fire trucks need to come in. So the same thing, we could open that up to let people leave that way. So yes, it'd be open. Did that clarify a little bit of what we're trying to do? And I just try to reiterate a little bit. Emergency preparedness is just an ever evolving thing. So we're going to constantly keep the book updated and constantly keep our policies updated. And I'd like to constantly train on the policies, so everybody knows what we're supposed to do and what's happening. And then also, we'll start doing drills. A lot of the drills are going to be in the healthcare side, but we'll start doing drills to make sure everybody is aware of what's going on. All right. And I would just ask, I guess everybody can kind of look for the active shooter. I'm really pushing to get the active shooter guy here to do that training. So hopefully that'll be soon. And then we'll start doing our monthly facilities meetings. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but we'll start doing that.
Mike, I'll talk real loud. When I go back to my room and my wife says, "What did they tell you to do?"
Oh,
I'm going to say they're going to be stay in my room like they tell me all the time. Sit in the room and wait.
so the question was, when we get back to your apartment, what are you going to tell your wife? So, and thank you for asking that, because it was something I was supposed to bring up and I didn't. So thank you. Eddie is recording this. This is being live streamed, and you are going to be able to go back and watch what we talked about. So I think it's on channel 974 under the hot topics is what I think Eddie put it under. So you will be able to watch it anytime you want. You go back and see it.
Okay, so was his question in regard to watching it later? So I couldn't hear what he asked, what he said.
His question was, when he gets back to his apartment, his wife asks him,
Okay.
what did we talk about?
Got it.
Hold on.
But isn't the answer basically shelter in place unless it's a major event and then somebody's going to be guiding you?
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're a shelter-in-place facility. That's somebody will come and help you when it's time. So yes. All right? Well, thank you, everyone.